Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Right now, with me in the studio, I have Mr. Jide Ologun, legal practitioner, national development advocate, and fellow, Institute of Leadership Coaching and Strategy, and Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos. Well, gentlemen, good to have you on the program. Well, but first, let's first of all celebrate Professor Bola Akinterinwa, who is a veteran of the family. He was editorial page editor of Thisday newspaper for more than a decade, having gone there on sabbatical from the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. He's an author. He's a distinguished intellectual, former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, a columnist with the Thisday newspaper, author of many publications on diplomacy and international relations. He's now at the Achievers University, Aworawo, where he helped to set up the faculty, the Department of International Relations. And, that department is already producing graduates. And so, his life has been one of commitment to the public space, to intellectualism. And, we congratulate him on the occasion of his 75th birthday. That was on Friday. But, of course, we could not go. I saw your celebration of him, Mr. Ologun. That was very kind of you.
Thank you,
and
sir.
I sent him a message to say, well, we may not be able to come to Ologun, but anytime he's in Lagos, he will have to come and celebrate here at Arise News. And we're very proud of him. He's one of the original members of this program, Thisday Live. And he's always been very committed. And we look forward to when Professor Bola Akinterinwa will come to Lagos and celebrate with us here. We wish him a very happy 75th birthday. By the same token, we commiserate with the people of Idoma and the Ogbe family, both immediate and extended, who have lost now on the 9th of August, Chief Ogbe, former chairman of the People's Democratic Party, former Minister of Communications of Nigeria, former Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development of Nigeria. We commiserate with the family and we wish his family and his survivors very well. He was very actively involved in the development process of Nigeria while he was part of that process. He started his career essentially as a teacher, as a lecturer at the Institute of Education, I think, at the Ahmadu Bello University. He subsequently went into public life, and in that regard, he distinguished himself in the regards that I've outlined. He was also a playwright. He wrote about 5 plays, and as someone with a background in dramaturgy myself, that's something that I would like to remark upon. It was a creative intellect in addition to his engagements in politics and public life. May his soul rest in peace. And we commiserate with the larger Benue State family who have lost one of their most distinguished sons on the national stage. That said, now we have 2 guests on the program today. First, Solomon Leno, talking about the scheduled August 30 local government elections in Rivers State and all the issues attached thereto, the constitutionality or otherwise of the president, or let's say the federal government, suspending Section 2 sub 2 of the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission law of 2018, thereby giving the sole administrator powers to organize elections. And people have raised questions. Is this legal? Why the rush? Why is it that all the people in the PDP voted during the primaries for APC? What is Wike's influence here? What is the future of Rivers State? And then we had also a second guest on the program, Professor Salihu, National Vice Chairman of the of the All Progressives Congress in the Northeast. And Comrade Dr. Salihu was talking essentially about the performance of the Tinubu administration, saying that no, Daily Trust was wrong to have said that there is hunger and poverty in the land and that there is a spread of hopelessness. That was one plank. The other plank that he dealt with was about the feasibility of President President Jonathan emerging as a candidate and displacing the president, and also the possibility, on the other hand, of Mr. Peter Obi emerging or displacing the APC. He says there is no shaking, and that the APC is prepared for these challenges because these challenges don't really mean much. Well, okay, I've tried to give a summary as briefly as I can. Professor Aworawo.
Well, I begin with the Rivers condition. I'm surprised that the government is pushing ahead with the local government election, despite the fact that people have pointed out the illogicalities in attempt to do so. Suspending a part of the River State laws, and then to allow the sole administrator to conduct the local government election. I think it is in Bar State. It all speaks to why Fubara was suspended in the first place, is to allow Wike and, by extension, the presidency, to seize the so-called structures in rivers. And they are pushing ahead, with that agenda, ignoring, ways of wisdom, advice, sound interpretation of the law, and even ethics. Mubarak conducted one election, the court nullified it. Now we don't even have, those structures in place. They appointed individuals in place of those that were elected. What they pointed out that was wrong with the election, one cannot really make so much sense of it. A whole lot of politics, and we should not let things degenerate so badly just because we want to, gain power. Under Obasanjo, when he used the word capture, everybody was shouting that elections are to be held and power is to be from the people, not capture. We are having something in reality along that line. So it's something I condemn. It's something I don't think it's a route I don't think the government should follow. But they seem to be pushing ahead to go ahead to do that. And you can see, just as you pointed out, the PDP people switching over to APC and all. I mean, it all speaks to the nastiness of the whole thing. I will be happy if the government has a rethink and does not go ahead. I'm not optimistic the government will do that because that structure they are, obsessed with. They want to seize it. And one way to seize it is to, go ahead with the local government elections and conduct it. But to me, legally, ethically, and otherwise, I don't think it's the right move. Then Dr. Salihu, well, does he live in Nigeria or he live on Mars? How can anybody in Nigeria today say there is no hunger in the land, all is well? He even spoke, there were even comments he made that would make Nigerians annoyed. That, things were so bad in 2015. There has been progressive improvement since 2015. How can anybody say that? Just do a sectoral analysis of Nigeria, 2015, 2025. Look at economy, look at debt, look at poverty, look at national integration. Which aspect of Nigeria will you talk about that you say there has been an improvement since 2015? In fact, if I'm to use one expression to describe 2015 to 2025, I'll use the expression, the lost decade. It's a lost decade. It's a lost decade. So for him to come around to say, all is well, a progressive improvement, I'm surprised. I mean, the poverty is real. I mean, if you have some money, just look at how many people are asking you for just 1,500, 2,000 to feed. It's not just about statistics that people are, oh, the statistics are wrong. 3 million that's not correct. There's even another statistic that says that 12 million Nigerian children are malnourished. And I think that is correct. Well, my advice to the president is that don't listen to this kind of people. Oh. If you do that, you will lose the next election. Look at these issues dispassionately, realistically, and see what you can do to improve the quality of life of Nigerians between now and 2027. That is what will give the president, some advantage in the next election. But if you listen to people like these who dismiss, sound analysis of the economy and the state and the condition of Nigerians, the president will go nowhere. I was talking about, when the analysis of 2 years of President Tinubu, and I scored in 60%. The barrage of attack I had from all over the country, you know that this is real. So the Dr. Saliu and the rest, they are not, they must defend the government, but I think there should be reasonableness in the defense they present. Then finally, President Jonathan. You know my take on that? President Jonathan should rest. He has done his bit. He is now internationally recognized for what he did and how he left. He himself said it at some point when he was leaving. He said, look, one reason why I decided to, because former President Buhari was always reflecting and saying, did the president concede defeat and hand over to me? And he said, look, even if I won the election, 4 years I will be done and I will leave. So why should people die just because I want to have the next 4 years? I've had the last 5 years, and that's okay. And I think that is where it should be. In fact, I will argue, there I agree with Dr. Saliu. If President Jonathan joins the race, it is to President Tinubu's advantage. They now become so many who will split into, as they say, yele. They will split into so many, and then that will be to President Tinubu's advantage. Actually, the one that should make President Tinubu panic is an Atiku-Obi combination. If they come together, they can win the election. That is the only part that should make the president and APC panic. Any other these things, just forget. President Tinubu will just, and I think President Tinubu has momentum. He will likely win. But if these two guys reconcile their differences... Okay,
what of a Jonathan Kwankwanso?
Forget that matter. President Tinubu will by 1 p.m., the election will be over. Look, many people feel the way I feel, that Jonathan is now a statesman. That what has he left in Aso Rock is going back to go and look for. In fact, from a personal point of view, he should not just, he should let people make the noise. Of course, he did that also in 2023, that, the Jonathan would come and contest. He didn't answer anybody. At the end of the day, the whole thing fizzled out. I would wish that he also keep quiet, let those things also fizzle out at this point. But the president needs to do something more, pay more attention to Nigerians, the welfare of Nigerians. What Australia has said, his analysis is not correct. I've not read the trust report, but hunger is actually in the land. And people are even saying, one final thing, let me just add this, that all those graduates who are unemployed, why are they looking for government job? Why are they looking for 8 to 5 job? They should create, wealth. What actually needs to happen is for our industrial sector to come up so that these young people can have jobs. When that happens, it will reduce poverty. It will make people become fruitful. It will also, of course, make us import less. That is what needs to be done. And not just say, oh, these young children, they are not enterprising. People like Elumelu, people like Wigwe and the rest, they work first. It's from work that they came up to establish their own. So the environment should be created for people to be able to express themselves. That's the point I'm making. Okay.
Let me come to you, Mr. Jide Ologun. Maybe, you posted on our WhatsApp group a celebratory message for Professor Akinterinwa. Maybe you have to, maybe you like to start from the soft to the political.
Doctor, I wonder why you were not in Ileoluji.
I was on TV in the morning.
A big taste of the pounded yam.
And palm wine. They have very good palm wine.
But I've told you, you have better palm wine in Okakoko in Ondo State.
I know the Ileoluji one, which I've tasted before in the past.
We celebrate Prof.
That's Prof there.
He's full of life and very cerebral, and a man that has passion for the development of Nigeria. And even at his age, he's still adding value to ensuring that the virtues and values of sustainable development is being passed on from one generation to another. So, and of course, he is also a celebrated community elder statesman, and that is why he ruled out the invitation to Ile-Oluji. And if some, Professor Aworawo, if you travel to that part of the country, after one day, you may not want to return to Lagos quickly. And he mentioned the oxygen in that environment, and so we wish him many more years, and that God will promote him from glory to glory, from strength to strength. We celebrate you, Prof. And when he comes to Lagos, the pounded yam must show face.
We are ready. Prof, are you not ready?
So, he himself said there are implications.
Yes.
In the message he said there are implications.
Yes.
It was quoting you.
So congratulations, Prof. We celebrate you, sir. More years of joy, of progress, of blessings from the Almighty God. Congrats. And congrats to the Thisday Live family. So that brings us to former President of Nigeria, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. I think he has achieved so much, except he wants to join the league of the likes of Chief Obasanjo and the former President Buhari, who just passed on, by coming back again. But I think, like the wise people have said, you quit the stage while the ovation is loudest. But having said that, I think what Lamido is doing is just making suggestions. And you recall that even towards 2023 election or thereabout, even APC was moving in the direction of bringing Goodluck into the fold. I think for what he has achieved, he may not surrender himself to the tantrums and the mudslinging in the political arena. I think he should just proceed as he is. So those were suggestions, because Lamido is saying, go and woo him. And for politicians, you think all that matters to them right now is how to win elections in 2027, and the games are on. So that brings us to the comment that there is no hardship in the land, or that the narrative bringing that on board is too harsh. I read about fearmongers. I read about panic journalism. However you describe it, the realities are there. So like we do in public relations, let me start from the positive to the negative. Yeah, there are many reforms going on. The tax reforms, the credits, the student loan, and different kinds of reforms going on. But if you go to Genesis chapter 47 from 13 to 31, you see that the main concern of Pharaoh was how to feed the people. It was very important in his economic readjustment. And the people matter. And let me go to content analysis. I think, 16th of November 2017, and 16th November is my wedding anniversary, so that has made to stick to my brain. The present president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was reviewing the midterm scorecard of the president then, Buhari. And he made reference to the fact that, Buhari may be doing well, but people are suffering. And he said he was saying that not because he wanted to criticize, that he was saying it in good faith. And he mentioned the fact that the government then should look at the case of the UK, Japan, China, and look at the industrial sector and how to energize the economy, make employment available. He even went to the extent of making reference to the need for true federalism. But we wonder that once the opportunity is given of stepping into office, is it that those realities disappear? And one of the concerns here now is that a report claimed about 33 million Nigerians are vulnerable to hunger. I think that figure is even generous, if you go out there. Because if you look at the countries that have done well in feeding their citizens and making life meaningful, you talk about Finland taking the lead. that you talk about, Norway. In fact, Norway takes so good care of the citizens that the citizens are even becoming lazy. It's a concern. And they have oil and gas. You see, and if you come to Africa, you talk about Egypt, you talk about Tunisia. And there are 4 pillars of this issue of caring for the citizens we are talking about. You talk about availability, you talk about affordability, you talk about quality, you talk about natural resources and resilience. And if you come to section 16, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, it says that the government must ensure suitable and affordable shelter, suitable and affordable food, reasonable living minimum wage, care for the old, for all citizens. So they are there. So these reforms must translate to good life for the citizens. I mean, ask what the disposable income of quite a number of Nigerians can afford now. It's very rough. You see, I have videos, I have pictures of citizens, whether some of them are from neighboring countries, it's another day's discussion, picking things from the dustbin. It does not speak well for a country that is wealthy in terms of resources. So I just want to address my President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, whom I respect, that, sir, you need to recall your comments in 2017. And recently, somebody told us the president is not isolated, that he drives out to see the reality. The reality is that there is hardship in the land. So it's not a political statement, and something must be done about it. Yes, I acknowledge the issue of direct cash transfer. Who are the recipients of this cash transfer? To what extent can that sustain a viable economy for the citizens? And that brings me to Rivers State. I'm not sure we've seen the last. But the man was talking about the judicial intervention. But I have read the judicial interventions on Rivers State, and sometimes it's like you get more confused. What the Constitution stated was that you defect, you lose your seat. But in the case of Rivers, so Rivers State is unique, and it has brought me to the point of leadership. There is what you call transformational leadership, which puts the general interest of your followers and the need for them to develop into your scheme of operations. Is that the case? No. He also mentioned the fact that these are crises between politicians. And it's true. And Rivers State, who is adjudged the second richest state in Nigeria, cannot, as we speak, deliver values to the citizens. And I agree with him that the governor, the democratically elected governor Fubara, who was suspended for 6 months, may be recalled. So perhaps before recalling him, you quickly have these local government elections. But finally, let me say the National Assembly has a lot to do. Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended states clearly that the National Assembly is empowered to make laws for the peace, orderliness, and good government in Nigeria. So we want these stakeholders to focus on the people. It's a good thing that politicians should realize you come to office, you leave office. But how are you going to leave the people, the states, the wealth of the nations? So I think this should, and for the people themselves in Rivers State, wake up to these realities. It's your state. If you allow political gladiators to take over, then it's up to you. And but at the end of the day, history will document whether you've added value to your society or you've taken too much value from your society,
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ologun. Let's take another story, also very topical. The Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCAA, has filed a complaint with the Attorney General and the Inspector General of Police over musician Wasiu Ayinde Marshal and Ufoishe's disruption of a value jet flight at Abuja Airport on Tuesday. Ayinde Marshal, a supporter of President Tinubu, was prevented from boarding a flight after carrying a flask with suspected alcohol and allegedly spilling it on an aviation staffer. He blocked the moving aircraft, violating civil aviation regulations. The NCAA has called for a criminal investigation and prosecution while imposing a 6-month ban on the musician. The authority warned airlines that flying him could result in the suspension of their licenses. Minister of Aviation Festus Keyamo condemned the musician's actions, comparing the blockade to a hostage situation, and ordered Wasiu Ayinde Marshal to be placed on a no-fly list. There are other details about the suspension of the pilot's license for 6 months, and also Kwamwan, as is otherwise known, showing up yesterday and apologizing. Well, is an apology enough? Is this about the big man syndrome? Is this a statement about, do you know who I am? Which is the affliction of so-called supposed big men in Nigeria. Mr. Ologun, let me come back to you, and then we'll come back to Prof.
Thank you very much, Doctor. You know, I hope that the nation proceeds with the involvement of the Attorney General and Inspector General of Police. It's a very serious breach, and I must commend what the Honorable Minister has done, talking about Festus Keyamo-San, by rolling out some penal measures, you know, in respect of the stakeholders. That was a serious one. And in human resource management, we talk about emotional intelligence. And I think on the part of Kwam 1 and the pilot, they were what was described as temporary loss of sanity, you know. And I think we need to operate against it and let the system that makes us all subject to the rule of law prevail. I just want to ask a simple question. Could this have happened in the UK, you know, for instance? And we are still debating whether to bring in the IG or the AG. So it's quite disturbing. But then, like you commented, Doctor, you know, big manism. When will he leave our country? You know, I recall managing a job for some clients, and I referred to one of them in a board meeting as Mr. He was so angry. He said, "No, Chief." And I quickly corrected myself, that Chief. And he was happy and smiled. But we should not allow our system to become such that some individuals can just come and trample on it by virtue of their influences. And I say all this subject to the outcomes of investigations, because in Nigeria, the investigations reports have the capacity of transforming. I raise my case.
Okay. Prof, your turn.
We are laughing now because there was no disaster. We are able to laugh now because there could have been a disaster.
Yeah.
I'll commend the minister. Keyamo did well, and he's been doing well, quietly and then doing his job. You know, the investigation has to be, you know, thoroughly carried out and concluded. And then the prosecution should go on if, you know, the need is established for it. We hope that there's no big man from somewhere that will make calls to say, oh, since he has apologized, let us just forget about it and all. That would not be good. It would be good for the, you know, legal process to be followed through to a logical conclusion. I'm not sure I've seen anything like this in my entire life, where somebody, the wing of a plane, the plane is moving, somebody is dodging the wing of a. I'm not sure I've seen anything like this in my entire life.
The mechanism was not strong enough not to dodge.
It's really shocking. The person I pity is the pilot. She should have been calmer, and she would have saved herself of her suspension if she were, you know, calmer. But this kind of thing could provoke anyone. That you could have everybody knows what you can go in with. And if you didn't know and they tell you, please drop this, I mean, what's the argument about? But just like Dr. Abadi said, I'm a big man, or I'm close to the president. I hope that was not part of what influenced the action, that I'm close to the president, so we are in charge. Who can stop me from you know, carrying just ordinary flowers and my drink? There is that mentality. I'm not sure whether it's you know, it reflected in this, but there is that mentality. But just as I've said, The investigation, let it not be, interfered with. Let it be completed. And if there is need for prosecution, let it be carried to a logical conclusion. And then that will teach lessons to, people who think they are bigger than the law. There was a comment I read online by Patrick Dole, who was saying that, big men are accorded some, celebrities are accorded some, preferences and concessions. He thinks that they didn't do enough to concede to Kwamwan. That's what I'm surprised. Celebrities who not obey the law. I mean, we are all celebrities in one way or the other, but we have to just obey the law. That's how you have a chaotic, society. So let the process go on. Let them conclude it. The apology should be accepted, but let the process be followed through to a logical conclusion. So that, if not for anything, it will serve as a deterrent to others who might think they are bigger than the society and they can do whatever they like.
And Doctor, by extension, I think the security apparatus of the aviation should also be investigated, because you must have passed through some protocols with this material. So how did he do that? I recall traveling to Dubai for a seminar, and I needed a particular teacup as part of the presentation practical. And I was not allowed to pass through the point. I had to drop it at the airport, So how did, if indeed that substance was alcoholic, how did he pass through the security? So I think we need to look at all this again beyond the major stakeholders that really acted out.
Okay, the investigation should be able to unravel all of that.
Well, okay. We'll keep a watching brief again on the matter. But all the points that have been made are very valid about bigmanism, about safety protocols and the management of our airports, and the fact that nobody is above the law in this country. Well, let's take probably another subject. Yes, we were supposed to have a guest on the program, but he has flight issues between Enugu and Abuja. So it looks like we will not be able to get to that third guest. Maybe next week we'll show up or during the week. But let's talk about Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky firmly rejected the idea of territorial concessions in a potential peace deal with Russia, following comments from former U.S. President, that's not former, that's U.S. President Donald Trump, suggesting a swap of territories. Zelensky stated that Ukraine's territorial integrity is enshrined in its constitution and no negotiations can alter that. Trump announced plans for a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, where discussions might address a ceasefire deal. While Trump implied territorial swaps could be part of the agreement, Zelensky made it clear that Ukraine would not concede any land seized by Russia. The U.S. has been mediating discussions with ongoing talks about Russia's demands, which include Ukraine ceding annexed territories and accepting permanent neutrality. Well, the war between Russia and Ukraine, President Trump said he will resolve it in 48 hours. Months later, that has not happened. Russia occupies up to about 10% plus of land in eastern Ukraine, from Crimea to Donetsk and other places, and yet it says it wants more. It wants to control that territory for both emotional reasons. However, Ukraine says, I think Section 1 and Section 2 of the Constitution of Ukraine says you cannot cede land, any territory of Ukraine, and that's what President Zelensky is talking about, except you amend that part of the Constitution, and then even if before you do that, there must be a referendum of the people of Ukraine. But here we are. Trump is going to meet with Putin in Alaska next Friday, and then all of these issues are on the table, including Trump's threat that he will impose sanctions on whoever does business with Russia. We've seen that, tariffs 25%, and more threats with regard to India that buys crude oil from Russia. But Prof, you are a professor of international relations. So what's going on here? Because it looks like both Russia and Ukraine, they don't see eye to eye in terms of the details. Despite all the meetings that have been held, whether in Turkey, right, or in London, those are places where negotiations are taking place, but there's no progress, in my view.
Yes, there is no progress because the issues are fundamental. Issues bordering on territorial concession are fundamental. They affect the sovereignty of states. And typically when you're analyzing a conflict, you ask whether the issues are accidental, transient, or fundamental. In this case, the issues are fundamental, and they're almost also zero-sum. When you have these kind of issues as a casus belli, in a war, they always take this form. They're always very complicated. Well, if I'm to advise both sides, I will advise Zelensky that his insistence on Russia also quitting the territory seized in 2014, he should share it. Russia will not, it's never going to do that. On the other hand, the lands that Russia has occupied in this current conflict, Trump should be able to get in the middle of both, because those are the extremes. To get Russia to leave those territories occupied in the current conflict, while keeping the ones occupied in 2014, so that both sides make concession. Zelensky making concession on his position that Russia, before any discussion could be accepted, Russia must not only quit territories occupied in this current conflict, but also the ones occupied in 2014, that's Crimea, mainly. If both sides shift ground like that, that could be a basis for moving forward. But it doesn't seem that either side wants to shift grounds at this point. Either side is mulishly obstinate. But for them to bring the war to an end, that has to happen. That is, to my mind, what the US president should focus on. But to just say, because Ukraine is the weaker side, or just see territories and all that, that will make resolving this conflict, almost impossible. So both sides have to grant concessions for us to move forward.
And
Mr. Ologun.
also, some European powers are meeting, and they are moving in the direction of not forcing Ukraine to bow to the dictates of the Russian system. And I agree with Prof on that. And Zelensky is coming out to say, hey, we have a constitution that has put us in a very stringent position. And of course, this war has come so far. So if Donald Trump is stepping in now to reconcile, I think it's all a matter of what can be negotiated. But I do not see Zelensky chickening out, but this war must come to an end between these two mortals. And unfortunately, like the elders have a saying that when two elephants battle, the grass suffers. Destruction has come, except Trump decides, like he offered to develop Gaza Strip, to bring development to Ukraine. Putin has really pounced on Ukraine, even though the casualties are on both sides. And we are monitoring to see the direction everything will go, but you cannot downplay the power of negotiations. Like a wise man said, in business you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. So whatever we make peace to be restored, I'm for it.
Okay, finally, our last topic on this episode of the program. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has warned political parties against early public campaigns for the 2027 general election, describing such activities as a breach of the Electoral Act. In a statement issued by Rotimi Oyekomi, Chief Press Secretary to the INEC chairman, the Commission responded to concerns about ongoing subtle campaigns and the display of posters ahead of the election. INEC stated that it is yet to release a timetable or schedule for the 2027 elections. According to INEC, open campaigning is only permitted 150 days before polling day and must end 24 hours prior to the election. The commissioner emphasized that no political party has yet held primaries or nominated candidates. The Electoral Act 2022, specifically sections 94 sub 1 and 95 sub 1, stipulates that campaigning for the 2027 election cannot begin until 150 days before the vote and must adhere to rules set by INEC. Mr. Ologun. So what are we facing? Impunity, lawlessness?
Yeah, something close to that, because the laws are clear. If you look at that section 94 and 95 of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended, it's clear when campaign should start. But you know, in an environment where the rule of law is not taking the prime stage, you have different arguments. So it's now for those who should, take them up on the issue of executing our laws to go ahead, so that it won't be a case of the dog that can only bark and cannot bite. So the laws are there, but with the politicians, respect the laws. And we have found out that it's not restricted to just one political party. And in Nigeria, we also have the big manism we have spoken about in the political arena. I mean, I have monitored elections in this country, and there is hardly any election where there are no electoral offenses committed. But how many have been prosecuted? I still recall vividly one of the elections in Lagos. It one Demola that was thoroughly beaten in this part of Lagos, and then for obvious violations, but no prosecution, nothing. So INEC should proceed to make sure that their laws and guidelines are respected. And the big question I leave on the table, are politicians mindful of the need for the rule of law?
Okay, Prof.
Yeah, INEC has done well. When there are infractions, INEC has done well. But just like Barrister Ologun said, enforcement is a problem. But beyond that, INEC too needs to, look at itself. Elections. The problem with elections is beyond starting campaigning early. The election itself, while we commend INEC for doing what it has done, we tell INEC, physician, heal thyself.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Aworawo, and thank you, Mr. Jide Ologun. I look forward to seeing you again next week, Sunday. And to our viewers, you've been watching Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.